In this lesson, we'll cover creating spaces. So you may ask, well, what's the difference between a space and a room? Aren't they the same? If I've already created rooms, do I need to create spaces? Well, they are different, and yes, you should create spaces, especially if you're going to use MEP. Rooms and room tags are mostly used for architecture. They define the room and number the room and associate everything in that room with that room number and room tag. Spaces, however, are used on the engineering side. They're used, for example, with MEP. They hold all of the engineering data that's required for analysis, such as HVAC analysis. So yes, you do need spaces if you're planning on running analysis and using MEP. Now, should the spaces in rooms be named the same and numbered the same? Yes, technically they should. And you can place the spaces either manually, meaning clicking each room and it'll create a space in that room area defined by the boundary of the walls, or space lines or room lines, or you could use a utility from Autodesk called the Space Naming Utility that'll actually analyze all of the rooms that you have and create spaces for each room using that room name and number for the space. Now that's a free utility you could download from Autodesk called Space Naming Utility. For our example here though, we're going to place spaces manually. The first thing I want to do, especially if you're linking an architect's Revit file into your MEP project, which we are doing right here. The walls, doors, windows, everything you see is the architect's model. We're working in the MEP model or project though. So the architect has already defined rooms and room tags. They're not visible in this view, but they exist. First thing I need to do is tell Revit that this linked architect's model, I want it to allow me to use the rooms for creating spaces. So to do that, let's just move your mouse over the model. And when you do, you'll actually see a blue bounding box, or basically a blue rectangle. And it's going to define this is the linked Revit file, the architect's file, if you will. Go ahead and click on it. Once you click it, you'll see the properties on the left in the properties area. Click Edit Type. On the Edit Type window, I want you to check mark the constraint for room bounding. That'll allow us to now see the rooms for when we create spaces. Click OK. And then simply click off of the model anywhere in the white area. Now we're ready to place spaces by recognizing rooms that are already created in the Revit Architect's model. So to place our spaces, let's go to the Analyze tab. Then on the Spaces in Zone panel, let's click Space. Now, since we activated or turned on room binding or bounding, we'll actually see when you move into the rooms, the space picks up those predefined rooms. So I'm going to start by just clicking in 3 spaces. One which is our conference, one which is our Office 1, another one which is Office 2, and another one which is Office 3. If I already had the spaces named based on spaces in a schedule, I could select a drop-down and choose the space name. Since we don't in this example, I just place the spaces individually. Notice the upper limit is level 1 for each space. It's taking a total of 8 feet. All of that is going to be used in calculations for analysis for mechanical systems within that space. Click Modify. Now, if we want to modify the space names and tags, simply move over the space name. When you click on it once, you actually see the binding area of the space. When you click on the text again, you can actually change the naming of the text space tag. In this case, I'm going to call this one Conference, based on what we called it in our previous example, and then click off of it. To change the number, I'll simply click on the number and change the room tag to 101. And I'll repeat the process for the spaces on the right, changing these to Office 1 with a number of 102, and then the second office will be Office 2 with a space number of 103, and then finally our last office is Office 3 with a space number of 104. Now, if we use the utility, the space naming utility, it would have automatically named the space names and numbers pulling from the actual room reference. Now, one thing you may want to do is change the visibility graphics of the actual linked Revit file to display the room tags so you actually can see them, or go to the actual schedule table to actually see the information for the rooms and how they match with the actual space tags. So as a review, what we looked at in this lesson was creating spaces. We talked about the two different methods of creating spaces. One manually, where you basically just click a room and it creates a space within that room, or two, using the space naming utility to create all of the spaces from rooms that are already predefined. We looked at the first method though, creating spaces manually. First, we turned on the ability to see the rooms from our linked Revit Architects project. Then we used the space tool to move over those rooms and place a space tag. We then changed the name of the space tag and also updated the space number.